Thank you very much, Travis. I always listen when people say longest serving, and I think that's a very polite way to say he's old. But thank you very much, Travis, and thank you, Travis, Tiffany, Francisco, Rachel, and everyone else that's involved in putting this conference on for 20 years now, and real action-oriented conference, and bring industry companies together with government of all levels and in various countries to really get things done. And this is the action item of the conversation that we need to have in our respective nations, and we certainly are attempting to have that in Canada here right now, but we also need to have it from a global energy, food, and manufacturing security perspective as well, because there are other countries around the world that would like us to not do so well in each of those spaces. Just before I get into some comments that will be fairly forward, I just want to extend, on behalf of the province of Saskatchewan, our condolences and our love to Rachel and the loss of your husband. And I would just say, if you're from Saskatchewan and you see Rachel today, give her a great big hug. Unless she says no, then don't give her a hug. I was going to mention, Travis, that you could invite everyone over to the legislature later today, but as in true form, and anyone knows Travis, he's already done that. Which is Travis is very ambitious in everything that he does, and I know he's been very bullish and ambitious in his conversations around this conference and this organization. We have folks here today from outside of Saskatchewan, outside of Canada, and I want to welcome you to our nation and to our province. For those from Alberta, I want to welcome you to one time zone all year round. But it brings me a great pleasure to stand here and speak as a leader, yes, within a prairie province, our beautiful province of Saskatchewan. Welcome you to it. But it brings me a great pride to stand here as a Canadian and as a North American as well, in front of you, knowing full well what you are doing in our economy, what you are doing on the topics of food and energy and manufacturing security, and what ultimately you're doing for the people that live in our communities in this great continent. And I have been in Washington, D.C. for a number of years now. And there isn't a visit and a meeting that goes by where I don't talk about North American energy security, North American food security, and the fact that in North America we all too often take food security for granted. But I would say that in this moment, when we are facing global uncertainty, we're facing uncertainty in trade sometimes, well, not sometimes, now, between our respective nations as well, that this conversation about keeping our eye on the ball with respect to what matters is more important than ever. More important than ever, because there are countries around the world, as I say, would like to weaken us on each of these topics of conversation. There's no question today that we're facing challenging times globally, on our continent, in our communities, challenging times for North American trade and the agreements that are being reviewed there, challenging times for literally our global supply chains. And I would say that we're feeling those challenges in our local economies and more broadly in the global economy, as well as we have discussions about the inflationary rate for families and for industries and for businesses all around this world. This context is exactly what should matter and should be discussed at conferences like this across our continent. And it's really a story about historical integration of our industries, and why how deeply connected our relative economies are. They aren't one. However, the sum of their totals is much greater than two, or three, in the case of our three countries. And to explain and understand why this connection is the source of our shared security, energy, food security, ultimately our general security as a continent, being able to defend ourselves, but also our shared prosperity that the Western world has. So let me start with something that I want to be clear about right up front. And I've been around for a little bit. Not old yet, Travis. But I would say, regardless of who occupies any office in our respective nations, including the White House, from a Canadian perspective, and in particular from a Saskatchewan perspective, the United States of America is going to continue to be our largest and most valued trading partner and ally into the future. This is the way it's been, and this isn't going to change, regardless of what you see on the news each and every day. And at the same time, We need to, as a province and as a nation, strengthen our trade relationship with countries around the world. And we can do both at the same time. Those two goals reinforce one another, and they make us stronger as a continent as well. Diversifying our global export markets and deepening our North American ties, those two goals are not in conflict in any way. In Saskatchewan, we've been doing both for some period of time now, deliberately and consistently. We didn't wait for today's trade volatility or today's global uncertainty in this province. We didn't wait for that to appear to start searching out and expanding our access into new markets around the world. We acted early, and we've stayed focused on precisely that action, because Saskatchewan is today one of the most export-reliant economies in Canada. We export over 70% of what we produce each and every day in this province. We are very globally connected, and over the past 20 years, we've seen the value of those exports, which I would say is the value of the wealth that we have in our communities. We've seen it steadily climb over the last 20 years. It was $17 billion. That was our entire export volume in 2007. The last 3 years running, it has been in around $45 billion, and it's going to continue to climb quite remarkably from there as we see new mining projects and new industries starting to construct as we speak. So that global reach that we have as a province in supporting our nation and supporting our continent globally, it does matter. But so does the perspective of who we are and who we trade with in this world. Even as we continue to expand our trade around the world, our most important economic relationship was with that country to the south of us. And I would say that our most important relationship collectively is the continent that we live on. Saskatchewan understands a very basic truth about this, about doing two things at once, about walking and chewing gum at the same time, and we can do it, surprisingly, even as politicians. We can grow new export markets globally. We can grow our footprint within those export markets globally. And we can continue to work to expand that free and fair trade environment, that integration of our industries across our 49th parallel and throughout Canada, United States, and Mexico. One does not come at the expense of the other. We're growing the size of the pie. And there's going to be more prosperity for all of us in doing so. In fact, I would say that a strong and fair North American trade relationship benefits not only all three of our countries, it benefits all three of our economies, and ultimately is going to even further solidify the strength that we have globally. Food security, energy security, and I would add to that manufacturing security. This relationship and the discussions that we have, and you will certainly see this in the months ahead, it will be a challenging discussion at times. But it is one that is worth finding our way towards. And I would also say that this relationship that we have is by no means a weakness, it is very much a strength. It's a strength of the industries that are creating wealth for the families that ultimately we as politicians represent, but all of us, in whatever community we live in. Those are our friends and our neighbors, and they are building our communities, which is why over the past year and a half, Saskatchewan has worked hard to engage directly with the U.S. administration and many of our counterparts in Washington, D.C. and across the United States of America, as well as in Mexico. We've worked to explain what this trading relationship actually looks like on the ground and how integrated our respective industries are, what it means to our respective economies, what it means to our workers that are building those economies and building those industries, and ultimately what it means to our families. And at the end of the day, that is what matters. On both sides of the border, our families, our industries, and our countries on both sides of these borders. Despite some of the rhetoric that we hear suggesting that the United States doesn't need what Canada or even Saskatchewan has to offer, I actually don't believe that to be true. Despite what I have heard on this trade relationship from the Canadian side, that this may be a weakness that we have developed, I don't believe that to be true. The facts of this trading relationship tell a very, very different story. And the reality is this, that our economies, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, are deeply integrated, and they're integrated for a reason, a very important reason. This integration is what underpins North America's food, energy, and manufacturing security. So let me start with energy. Saskatchewan is home to some of the highest grade uranium in the world, and we are global leaders in uranium production and now venturing in with Saskatchewan companies into the nuclear space, again in partnership with American companies. As nuclear power continues to expand, Saskatchewan's role is only going to grow in this space, and it is growing as we speak with new mine sites coming on stream. Right now we have 2 uranium mines operating in this province, and they're under construction. We have 2 more that have completed all of their provincial federal approvals, are starting construction, and 1 more that will shortly. This matters, and it matters to the United States of America because that partnership with a nuclear company is in the United States of America. It matters because the United States only produces about 5% of the uranium that they need to fuel the reactors that they have on stream today, never mind the ones that I talk with Secretary Burgum that are coming. In fact, 1 in every 17 American homes today, never mind industry, but homes today, is powered by uranium that is produced in this province. Canadian uranium, of which all is produced in Saskatchewan. And our energy integration across these borders goes well beyond uranium. The United States imports electricity from both Canada and Mexico. And we're currently, we in this province are building an intertie with the Southwest Power Pool, 650 megawatt intertie, paid for by the people of Saskatchewan to further integrate our electricity systems, to buffer our electricity system in this province with a larger electricity pool, but also to ensure that we all have the lights on, we have reliable, affordable power across this nation. And that is a key part of energy security, is to have reliable, affordable power for industries and for the families that live on this continent. In fact, more than 80% of the imported electricity in the United States comes from Canada, in addition to the uranium that is powering nuclear reactors in the U.S. That same level of integration is true in agriculture. American farmers, and I would say Canadian farmers, rely on inputs that are crossing this border each and every day. I was down in Mexico not long ago visiting a canola crush facility that was crushing Canadian canola, and I'll get to an example in a moment of how integrated how the integration across the 49th parallel is very important in the production of that canola. More than 85% of the potash that is used to fertilize American corn crops and American agricultural crops across the country, again, comes from this province. In fact, 35% of global potash supply comes from this province, and you have potash companies sponsoring this very conference. And even with the enormous scale of American agriculture, and it is enormous, and it is global leading, the U.S. still partners with Canadian and Saskatchewan producers on a daily basis in this industry. In 2024 alone, and we have products going back and forth across that 49th parallel all the time to be processed in the U.S., processed in Canada, add value to the product that is produced on our continent, and providing ourselves food security, and in turn providing food security around the world. In 2024, the U.S. imported more than $4 billion worth of canola oil from Canada. 60% of that came from this province right here. Canola crush plants in Regina, in Yorkton, in Lloydminster, Nipawin, and other communities. They support jobs on both sides of the border. In fact, some of those plants are owned by American companies and investments by American companies. Beyond agriculture and energy, Saskatchewan also is looking ahead. To use a Wayne Gretzky analogy, who you have to have a hockey analogy when you come to Canada. We're looking at where the puck is going to be, and we're looking to the next generation and what is going to power and fuel the next generation. We are home to 27 of 34 of the critical minerals that Canada has identified. We are developing, as we speak, rare earth elements with a processing facility in Saskatoon, working closely with American companies on a commercial basis, as well as where that technology is going to lead us in the future from a military defense basis to ensure that we are secure as a continent. Not secure as a nation, but secure as a continent, including, and add to that, we have lithium, we have helium, we have hydrogen, we have copper, zinc, alumina, and silver, and many other products that are being developed or in the process of being developed as we speak. These materials are essential when we look ahead to advancing our manufacturing, our clean energy, our economic security across the continent of North America. Canada very much partners with the United States because it makes Canada stronger, yes, but I would say that it also makes the United States and Mexico stronger as well. In turn, makes for a more secure continent. At the end of the day, we need to ensure that we are keeping our continent secure, and we do so through having economic security, and we do that through ensuring we have energy security, food security, and manufacturing security. So yes, I would say that the United States needs Canada, but the Canada also needs that trade relationship with the United States. And this is not a one-way relationship. It's not even a two-way relationship. We need to have Mexico in this relationship as well. Our geography and our climate make this pretty obvious. We don't grow a lot of lettuce here in the winter. We don't grow a lot of carrots here in the winter. We simply cannot grow everything that we need. We can grow more than we need in certain products, but we can't grow everything we need. And so our imports of certain items into our nation, into our province, are substantial, coming from the United States, coming from Mexico, even coming from other areas of the world as well. Our manufacturing sectors, our respective manufacturing sectors in agriculture, which is big in this province, of course the auto manufacturing sector throughout the central and eastern parts of our continent are so deeply integrated that I'm not sure if there is a way to actually separate that level of integration that is happening. And again, it isn't just about efficiency, it's about livelihoods on each side of the border. It's about affordability for us when we go to buy those products that are being built, and it's about stability for our communities, our families, and ultimately for our respective nations. And it all sounds rather abstract when you talk at these high levels, but I'll bring it down to a real-life example, and I think this will put on full display the integration that we have in our respective industries. I'll use agriculture as an example, but it's true in energy. It's true in it's even more true in manufacturing, and it's true in virtually every industry that is creating wealth and creating value on our continent. You picture a Saskatchewan farmer. You saw a few in the video that we had. And the first thing that farmer is going to do is he's going to go out and buy a CNH quad track, built in Fargo, North Dakota. He fuels it with diesel, likely refined in Edmonton or maybe Texas, and he hooks it up to an air drill that was manufactured in St. Brew. The seeds that he puts in that air drill, the plant, they come from genetics that are developed just north of here at the University of Saskatchewan, the Crop Development Center, and just to get a plug in there, that's my alma mater. The crop is then fertilized with a mix of fertility products. You'll have potash that may be produced at Rocanville or Esterhazy. You'll have phosphorus from Florida, nitrogen likely from somewhere like Enid, Oklahoma. Then it's sprayed with equipment. GPS powers some of the latest application equipment that you can find on Earth that's produced and built in Des Moines, Iowa. The crop protection products, they're going to come out of the southeastern U.S. At harvest, that farmer is going to use a windrower that's built in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and then his big green John Deere combine. We love big green John Deere combines. They're assembled in East Moline, Illinois. It's all going to be powered with fuel, again, from a refinery in Regina or Lima, Ohio. And then the grain is going to be put into a trailer that is built in Denton, Texas, and it's going to be pulled by, it's going to be put in a trailer that is built in Anaheim, Saskatchewan. It's going to be pulled by a truck that is built in Denton, Texas, a Peterbilt truck, and it's ultimately going to be delivered to a processing plant in maybe Cedar Rapids, Iowa, if it's oats. Quaker Oats is then going to make those oats, process those oats, employing Americans, and provide us with oatmeal every morning, which is one of the meals that we might eat to provide ourselves with food security, but they're also going to ship that product all around the world and provide many other of our allied nations food security as well. That's one farmer, that's one operation. Wherever it is, on either side of the border, the story remains true. The integration matters, and it's there for a reason. That's North American integration in action. That's the strength of what we can do across our continent. Look at how many jobs are involved in that process. One farmer. How much economic activity exists on both sides of the borders. How much value is added to our economy on both sides of the border. That's what an integrated supply chain looks like. That's what shared prosperity looks like. That's what 1 + 1 = more than 2 looks like. And that integration exists in our food security supply systems. It exists in our energy industry, our manufacturing industry, our mining sector, you name it. And this is the type of integration that is going to ensure that the Western world is successful in the years and decades to come. So if we truly want to protect this security that we have to keep talking. We have to keep engaging. We have to keep working together through the challenges that might arise today and keep our eye on the ball. Keep our eye on what the strategic long game is. Where do we want this relationship to be in 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years? Because I would say, as we live on this continent together, we do need one another, and we need to work together. The world needs what we do. The world certainly needs what we produce in North America, And I would like to think of our North American economy, the Canadian, the Mexican, and the United States economy as essentially a three-legged stool. And that strength of that stool lies in its balance. Even on uneven ground, that stool is balanced. Right now, I would say that ground is a touch uneven at times. It's uneven globally. We're seeing relationships change globally. But that balance, that food security, energy security, manufacturing security, that ability for us to work together is what is going to keep North Americans strong. Have a great conference, everyone.
So your speech today, a lot about trade and touting Saskatchewan. How important is it to have these kind of conferences and this kind of event here?
Very important. When you have an international conference, and this conference is really put on by the three countries that are signatories to USMCA or CUSMA, there's a lot of action that happens and comes out of these conferences with liaisoning, industries with relative levels of government in each of our countries. And so this is a particularly, I think, impactful conference on, or the impact that the members of this conference can have in further having that conversation between various levels of governments in our three countries and the industries that are creating wealth and jobs also in those three countries. The bulk of my comments were on how our economy and our industries are integrated across those borders, and how that is our strength, not our weakness. And we need to, in amidst the review of CUSMA, we need to keep our eye on, what do we want this relationship to look like in the long-term years into the future, and continue working legitimately towards that.
That's been a theme of a number of your talks when you do give them recently. Do you feel the need to hammer that home, given some of the global?
Yeah, I actually do feel the need for us to be very strategic in our actions and what we do at every level of government and in industries. I've often said you'll hear some rhetoric through the USMCA or the CUSMA review over the next number of months from. In fairness, likely on many sides of the table. It's important for us at whatever level we are at, whether it be in government or industry, to keep our eye on the long game. And to keep our eye on the broader trade relationship that we want to achieve, not on the particular discussion of the day, which may at times jeopardize some of that, that opportunity that we have to get to a free and fair trade deal sooner rather than later.
You used the analogy of the three-legged stool. You mentioned that there was some iniquity or some unbalance. I'm curious if you could elaborate on what that imbalance is that you see right now.
Well, you name it. I mean, we have a number of wars going on in the world. That would be an unbalance that we haven't had for a while. We see, major supply chains through the Strait of Hormuz that are being restricted, whether that is impacting, gasoline prices, oil supply, or fertilizer for us in the Western world as well. That would create some imbalance and some inflationary pressures. And we're at the 5-year review point of our CUSMA deal as well, and we've seen those discussions go back and forth with respect to the desire of the U.S. administration and the president to pretty significantly change that trade arrangement, like he has with many other countries around the world. That would be an imbalance as well that we haven't had to navigate in the last number of years. However, the strength is in the three legs of that stool. And this is, the United States of America is our largest trading partner, and we must, keep things in context as we find our way through the days, ultimately to what we hope will be an agreement in the months ahead.
There was a little bit of reporting from Bloomberg that I wanted to bring up. It's about K+S, and particularly some German-American trade relationships, which have become a little bit more fractured, a little bit more difficult. And the reporting from Bloomberg says that K+S has examined the possibility of withholding or ratcheting back potash exports to America in the event of further trade conflict. I was hoping to get your thoughts on that and the impact that may have on Saskatchewan.
I'm not aware of that, but I would just again say that's precisely one of those, daily or weekly occurrences that we need to look beyond. We truly do. And we'll look at our province specifically, but we export and trade with over 160 countries around the world. There's going to be some movement with respect to that. U.S. is our largest exporting and importing partner, and there's going to be all sorts of these day by day, week by week comments, decisions that might be made at the industry level, comments that might be made by politicians. And you are going to, I hope, consistently see myself and hopefully some others try to remind everyone of what we want the outcome of this review to be, which is a strong trade relationship that makes for food and energy security, not just in Canada and not just in the United States of America, but across our continent of North America.
For sure, but if there's an interest like K+S, which might say, hey, we're looking to walk this back a little bit or ratchet this back, doesn't that directly impact the kind of, continental security that you just spoke about? If a player like K+S can say, hey, we're going to look at ratcheting back our exports to the U.S. as a result of these trade relations, doesn't that immediately impact our security here?
There's many potash suppliers in Saskatchewan and around the world, and there's a global market. So they may be making a choice from their own business perspective to sell more potash into one of the other markets that they sell into around the world, and lessen their dependence on one country in particular. Industries are going to make those decisions, and individual companies are going to make those decisions all the time. So the discussion doesn't concern me. That's a choice that that particular company will make. I respect that. And there's a lot of potash, as I say, that goes to a number of different countries from this province alone. We're 35% of global supply, and we'll climb with new mines coming up.
You mentioned the Strait of Hormuz. I think the last time we heard from yourself or the finance minister about Saskatchewan's situation with the oil prices was a little more than a month ago. So I want to ask you now, I guess, how are the coffers looking with those much higher oil prices?
Well, I mean, they're good as far as the first month of the budget year goes. April 1st was the start of the budget year, so the first month, oil is higher than we had projected. Both us and Alberta, oil is a significant part of our budget. When I got on a plane to go to India with the Prime Minister, oil was, I think, $59 or $60 a barrel. When I got back to Canada, it was up $30 from that. The President himself has said that it would drop if he was to come to some sort of a truce or a ceasefire or whatever you want to call it, an agreement with Iran. So we're going to wait out what is a very very fluctuating environment. Even today, we're seeing the oil price move between $5 and $10 either way a day. But we're a month into our budget. We'll update that at the quarter reports as we come along, as we come through the year. And we have an $819 million deficit that we need to find our way to balance.
I'm a little curious about some of the conversations about you use the example of the Seed Hawk air drill.
Gorgo, I think it was.
Oh, my apologies. But we talk about...
Could be a Seed Hawk.
It could
be a Seed Hawk. Seedmaster, Morris, Pillar Laser Works. Could be a lot of them.
You use that as an example of the sort of cross-border relationship that we have in North America. I'm curious about how you square that porous nature of a border with something like your energy security plan, which relies on coal, because we don't have to import fuel sources from elsewhere, don't have to rely on America, don't have to rely on Alberta. And I'm curious about how provincial energy security factors into that, because as we move towards nuclear power as well, unless we have a CANDU reactor that doesn't use enriched uranium, we're going to have to send that out of Province 2 for enrichment for power. I'm curious about how you square all of that, because it seems like there's some contradiction.
Our decision to use our existing power generation assets is less about the fuel and more about reliability and cost, affordability. In the power that's being produced in the Estevan area, it's extremely affordable power. So that is what is driving the decisions behind how we generate power, to what level we generate power. And I would say it's driving some of the decisions and the opportunities that we have to be able to power a number of industries that are building mine sites, data centers, and other things in this province right now. Over $62 billion of private sector investment, most of it, if not all of it, using some level of power. Second to that, and equal to that, is the ability to have reliable, affordable power for Saskatchewan families. And at the end of the day, that's the goal, is to attract investment, create careers, create wealth, create opportunity for Saskatchewan families, but also to have an affordable cost of living here, including the utility rates that they pay. So that decision is more about affordability and reliability than it is being energy secure within our province. However, I would say that being energy or electricity secure in our province would be part of that conversation. And you're right, as we find our way to a nuclear future, whether it be SMRs or quite likely moving to the conversation around the potential large-scale reactors being deployed in this province. We do have the fuel source here with likely three more uranium mines being built. But you rightly identified, the technology we would likely look at, which is owned by a Saskatchewan company, Cameco, would have to be enriched somewhere else. Hopefully in North America would be the plan. And again, I think it speaks to the importance of integration across not only the 49th parallel, but within our continent. That technology is currently being deployed. That technology that's owned by Cameco is currently going to be constructed, built, and deployed in the U.S. I think they committed to 8 reactors or 10 reactors. I can't remember the exact number.
8 in Georgia.
Yeah, I think
that's the Westinghouse.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about, there's been a lot of chatter the last number of days about expanding trade relations with Europe and the Prime Minister over there. And what do you make about all that talk about closer ties with Europe?
Good. We have a trade deal with Europe, and I'd like to see more trade going to Europe. However, often I would just say Europe gets in front of themselves with some of the regulations that they look at and even enact at times, and it can impact their the cost, the inflationary cost of goods that they buy when they put further regulations on food imports that are coming in, for example, and it can impact the cost and accessibility to their energy and electricity access as well. And we've seen that in recent years, most particularly in Germany, but in other areas. But there is a great opportunity for us to to further integrate with Europe, not only when it comes to accessing them as a export market, but right today we see tens of millions of dollars being invested by BASF, a company that is based out of Germany. Very much has been part of our agricultural industry in the supply of crop protection products and innovation, and they are investing in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan at their research farm here just announced this morning. And so there's further opportunities, I think, for integration in Europe. However, it would do, whether it's Europe or Canada or others, as they make policy decisions around expanding our economy, our trade, that they do so with an economic lens on the decisions that they're making. And I would say that in both countries, sometimes we've tripped on that.
What are your thoughts in general on Saskatchewan's ties to Mexico and where you see the future going in terms of trade?
I think the future is bright. We import from Mexico, but we also export a significant amount to Mexico. I was down there, I'm going to say a couple of years ago now, and our relationship wasn't real great with them at that point in time due to some comments by the previous Prime Minister and maybe even my friend a colleague on bilateral as opposed to trilateral trade deal. However, we had a good visit down there, and we visited a canola crush plant that was utilizing Canadian canola, talked about some of the logistics challenges that they have there, the fact that they'd like to see more Canadian canola coming into that space, the CPKC purchase of the rail line going right down into Mexico now, I think opens up some export opportunities as well. So I think, Mexico has become, in the last few years, in excess of $1 billion export market for us. That's new. And they're one of 9 countries that we've increased trade to at times of over $1 billion. But I think there's upside potential to that relationship in two-way trade.
That's our last question, and then I do have to get Premier moving on the next day.
I wanted to ask you about the NDP is asserting that a bill that's going through around ISC is preparing ISC to have its golden share be sold.
No, the bill actually secures the golden share. If they read it, they should read it. I'm questioning whether they read any of them as they come forward with amendments that are often included in the bill. So listen, ISC, the board, has initiated a process, a strategic review that they're doing. We would await if there's a recommendation that comes from that board. We haven't received one yet. What we've done is pass some legislation during our sitting, should a recommendation come, to ensure that the golden share is not only in place, but is strengthened. is strengthened to ensure there's board members that would be come from this province of Saskatchewan. The IP would be housed here. The head office would stay here. Really, it strengthens what was already in the legislation. And if they read it, and I'd encourage them to do so, they would realize that the legislation that has been introduced, and I believe is finding its way through committee last night, is stronger than the original legislation. So we'll await any recommendations that come from the ISC board, but we're prepared to act if necessary.
Is it stronger because
Yes.
the Bill 57 repeals the entirety of Part 3 of the original act, which is the no entity other than the government of Saskatchewan can own more than 15% of the company.
Right.
Getting rid of that does seem to indicate that there might be a greater sale of ISC occurring. And I think that's one of the criticisms of this bill, is that this appears to be setting the stage for a greater sell-off of ISC.
Well, again, we'd await what recommendations come through the, from the board through the process that they're going through. But when you look at the metrics of what was included in the golden share previous and what is included in the golden share now, it's stronger. There's no arguing that. It is.
Isn't it only 39%?
Is which only 30?
The golden share?
No, the golden share is outside of the ownership of the company. The golden share is a piece of legislation that is in place that the company would need to adhere to in their operations moving forward, regardless of who owns it. They have to keep their head office in Saskatchewan. The jobs need to stay here. The IP the intellectual property would have to stay domiciled in the province of Saskatchewan, and there'd be board members that have to be appointed from Saskatchewan. The golden share is more into that space on how they operate as opposed to the ownership.
All right,
I think we own 29 now is what.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Premier.